Welcome to Creative Tian channel. This is the part 2 of our machine knitting neckline shaping. Last time we did the shaping of the neck curve and the shoulder, and today we are going to focus on the neck band. And there are basically two types. One is with a fold over, and I just use a plain stitch. The other type is to use a ribbing. For the ribbing, you can either do hand manipulation or use a ribber. In this video, I will show you how to use a ribber to finish your neckline ribbing. In the last video, we only did the front side of the neckline. So today, I also show you the chart I use for the back side. It's the same except the opening is smaller. If you want to see the chart, it will be on my blog at creativetian.com. We knit the back side the same way. Put one side on hold and do the show roll. The first decrease, we have 4 stitches decreased, so we pull out 4 stitches, knit one row, and then move the yarn below the first needle and knit back. And we just continue following the chart to finish our back piece. So that's what our back piece look like. And here is the back side of the back piece. So to continue the neckband, we can hand the stitches back to the machine. And we can start from the center because the center 12 stitches, we don't have any shaping, it's just flat. And then we pick up the stitches next to that until before the shoulder. And according to our chart, we have 15 stitches on the shoulder. So those stitches we don't pick up. So the first neckband, we are going to use the plain stitch and then just turn over. So we don't do the ribbing for this one. For the tension, we want to be smaller than your main tension. And some people like to do the gradual reduce of the tension, and I think it's a good idea. My main tension is 9, so I'm going to reduce to 8. I will knit 3 rows of tension 8 and then 3 rows of tension 6. After that, we want to do a turning row, and we can have a big tension for this row. I can keep it tension 9 or 10. And continue to knit the other side of the neckband, but in reverse. We start with smaller tension. We do tension 6, 3 rows, and then change to tension 8, 3 rows. After the neckband is knitted, we can pick up the stitch from the beginning. It's on the waist yarn, so you can see easily. So we pick up those stitches and put back to the working needle. And it's easier to pick up stitches from the center first. Now the only thing left is to bind off. You can bind off any way you want as long as it's not too tight. And many people like to knit one row loosely and bind off that way, or you can do the sewing bind off. I'm going to use the sewing bind off here because it's very stretchy and it has a nice finish. So I cut off the yarn, leaving about 3 times of the neckband width and just starting to sew. I start from the rightmost needle and I start from the back to the front, go through both stitches, and then I will go to the second needle. There are 2 stitches on each needle. After I thread the yarn from the back to the front of the first needle, I go back from the second stitch, go through the front, and then go back to the back side of the first needle, front to the back. And then we complete the first needle. We can take stitches off the first needle. And we'll repeat that So from the back to front, going through both stitches, and then go to the next needle, front to the back. We just go through the first stitch of that needle and then go through the back stitch of the previous needle. And then we can take the stitches off that needle. And we will continue doing that all the way to the end. So that's a neckband number 1. And I will take off the waist yarn and show you. If you are doing kid size sweater, you can connect the shoulder first and do the whole front and back together. But for adult size, it's too big to fit in one machine. So we do front and back separately. And then we can seam up the sides using matrix stitch. The next method is using the ribbing. I'm using the front sweater piece, and we have to hand all the neckline stitches back to the machine just like before. We can start from the center 12 stitches and then hand it back one by one until before the shoulder. If you don't have a ribber, you can do hand manipulation. Just refold it by latching up. And here I want to change the connecting arm to connect to the ribber carriage. And make sure our pitch is set to 3p. That's the full pitch. And then we can transfer every other stitch from knitter to the ribber. And we want to keep the first and last stitches on the knitter for the 1x1 ribbing. And if you have 2 knitter stitches at the end, you can decrease 1 stitch just by transferring 1 needle over. And for the tension, we want it to be smaller too, so I use number 7 on both carriage. For my brother 260 knitting machine, the 1x1 ribbing setting is basically just plain knitting, and we just pick the right tension. Now we can start knitting, and you can decide how many rows you want. I need 7 rows here. And then transfer all the ribber stitches back to the knitter. Now again, it's the bind off time. For bind off, you can do different methods. We just don't want it to be too tight. You can do the sewing bind off, similar to the one we just did. Sew 2 stitch forward and 1 stitch back. Or you can just knit 1 row in a looser tension and bind off that way. Now that's all done for the front side. It looks pretty neat. After you done both front and back side of the neckband, you can just sew up the side seams with a matrix stitch. So that's the 2 basic types of the neckband you can knit with a knitting machine. Thank you for watching. See you next time.